Great to see everyone. Thank you guys so much for being on the panel. As we were just saying, we are talking about the outlook for 2023. But before we jump into that, we want to first introduce our panel. So I actually do have a different question for you, although that would have been a great question. We'll make sure we make time at the end for that. Love for you guys to introduce yourselves. What are you doing? But we also want to know you a little bit too. And so since we're in Vegas, which is one of the cities that never sleeps, one fun fact question for you is, do you like sunrise or sunset? Okay. And the second thing is, since we're talking about the outlook and thinking about the future, when you were a kid and you were thinking about what you wanted to be when you grew up, what was going to be your career?
That's deep.
We can start deep, right? Did you make it? All right, so we can start anywhere. Whoever wants to go first.
I'll go ahead and start,
Yeah,
no
go
problem.
ahead, Alia.
My name is Alia J. Daniels. I am the co-founder and chief operating officer at Revry. Revry is an LGBTQ first media company, so we focus specifically on CTV and OTT. We have channels available on Samsung, Vizio, TiVo, lots of other partners with 4 million monthly active viewers. And we're so excited to be here at Brand Innovators and being a part of Brand Innovators, which we're really, really happy about. For me, I would say sunset. And what I was going to be when I grew up. Okay, super fun story, and I'm going to keep it real quick. When I was in 3rd grade, I started telling everyone, because they're like, oh, what are you going to be when you grow up? So I started telling everyone that I want to be a lawyer. Now, I did go to law school, and I did become a lawyer. But the best part of it is I lied. I did not actually want to be a lawyer. My best friend wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a singer, but I was super shy. So if you tell someone you want to be a singer, they're like, ooh, sing something. And I'm like, absolutely not. So I told people I wanted to be a lawyer and then forecasted my life and became a lawyer. So there's that.
I love it.
That's fantastic. Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Goldstein. I'm the Vice President of Global Agency and Consulting Alliances at Braze. Braze is a customer engagement platform. Progressive marketers use us to send relevant and personalized messaging to their consumers, things like email, SMS, app push notifications, and such. And of course, these personalized experiences that we power drive engagement, long-term retention, lifetime value, loyalty, and so on. So obviously a very important component of the modern marketer's technology stack. I am maybe not this morning, but I'm generally a sunrise kind of guy. I'm doing a bike ride tomorrow morning, bright and early. So yeah, I'm a sunrise kind of guy. And childhood dream was, I guess mine's kind of cliche. I wanted to be a firefighter, and I'm actually a volunteer firefighter in my hometown of Comac, New York. So I moonlight as a firefighter while I do customer engagement by the day. So lived out.
Probably lots of fires you fight all day, though. So.
It's constant putting out of fires, no matter where I am. That's right.
Hard to follow that up, but I'm Patrick Rice, Senior Global Director of Brand Partnerships and Ad Sales at Brave with a V. Very excited to be able to make this distinction. Yeah, so Brave is a privacy web company. So we have a browser, search engine, and we have Web3 integrations. So an integrated wallet directly into the browser, and many other features, as well as a privacy-preserving ad network. So we work in my line at the company with brands all over the world to distribute privacy-respecting ads to consumers who opt in or control how much and how often they see them. And that'll be a theme that we talk about today. I am a sunrise person. I think they're, for me, a little less frequent than sunsets. And when I see them, I feel pretty good generally. And fun fact, okay, when I was younger, depending on the age, as a little kid, probably a Ninja Turtle. That didn't really pan out.
Nice.
But,
I see those guys walking around the strip here.
Yeah. Beyond that, though, it was probably a toss-up between a baseball player and a snowboarder. And that didn't pan out either. But
you're here.
But
here
we're
we are.
here. And this is just as good, better, probably.
Hi, Chris Grosso. I'm the CEO of Intersection. We are the largest independent out-of-home advertising company. We're focused on major U.S. cities, and the way we work is that we will work with cities to bring some form of consumer amenity. It might be the Wi-Fi kiosk in New York City. It might be the customer information system for the Chicago Transit Authority. And we'll deploy that, and then we sell advertising against that. So it's really an advertising-supported infrastructure company. In terms of sunrise, sunset, definitely sunrise, definitely a morning person. And then, when I was growing up, I was always very passionate about like trains and wanted to be a conductor, but I was kind of clumsy, and I don't think anyone would want me driving their train, but at least I can sell advertisements on them now.
That's great. Well, and we didn't plan it, but we got the sunset people on this side and the sunrise over there.
I'm right in the middle, so it's like a...
That's great. Okay, so we're gonna talk about 2023 and what should we be thinking about as marketers should be really important. So I think to build in the question about learning too, love to hear from you all on what do you think what's the one area that marketers should not overlook in 2023? And do you have any advice on podcasts, places to go to learn about kind of that area? So I think we're gonna. You want to start, Alia? We don't have to go down the line here, but
Yeah. So I think all marketers are very aware that DEI is very important, and being able to tap into specific communities and segments is necessary for any planning that you're doing. But I really want to highlight, and you'll get a lot of this from me today, but really highlight the LGBTQ community in particular, because one, it is a true community of communities. It is inherently multicultural. It's not one race, it's not one ethnicity, it's not one gender. It's a true community of communities. So you're going to be tapping into a very robust multicultural space and segment as it is. But even more so, what's really exciting is it's worth $1.7 trillion in disposable income. So not only is it something you should be doing, but for your dollars as well, it's absolutely something that you should be doing. And as far as what you're reading, I mean, I'm always checking out Brand Innovators events. That's like, I've gone to like 2 now, and it's like every time it's like the most amazing experience, and I love that. So I think it's fantastic, and just meeting wonderful people and talking and learning about specific different areas. So I think that's great.
you want to jump to the end and come back down?
Okay. I think, thank you. One of the biggest, and I agree, Brand Innovators has been fantastic, and it's been a great experience meeting everybody. I think, when you're in the media business, you're really in the audience development business. And I think the most important trend in media for media companies, and we're effectively a publisher, is where the audience is going. And I think that's an important trend for marketers as well. And there's a couple big things I think going on as you're coming out of the pandemic. First is, where are people spending their online time? No one's watching linear TV anymore. They're spending a lot more time on connected TV. That audience has moved dramatically. The dollars haven't shifted that way in the same sort of way. So I think that's an important trend to be ahead of that. I think the trend around where people are in physical space, like we're all back in real life, which is great. And if you look at how cities, and what we spend a lot of time on is looking how people behave in cities, you can see that people are out and about in their cities, but they're all in their neighborhoods. They're spending time at outdoor restaurants. They're spending time at stores, and thinking about new ways to reach them when they're in real life is also really important. And that could be retail media, which is going to be huge. Not just retail media buying the keywords on Amazon, but retail media either outside the store or inside the store. I think is a massively important trend, and something that was alluded to in the last panel. And I totally agree that's something that we're definitely seeing as well. So I think looking at where the audience is, this audience evolution that's been massively accelerated due to the pandemic, to the new digital experiences and things like streaming, and the new real world experiences out in their neighborhoods, I think is a critical trend for people to be ahead of.
I want to second your connected TV. Absolutely.
Yeah, so for me, I can't not think about the larger economy. So my kind of short answer to this is the bottom line. I think every marketer is looking at that, especially if you're on a line of revenue and you're responsible for that. But the bottom line is going to be important this year, depending on your source of information. We are in or approaching a recession, and that's always a challenge. So, but in marketing, typically what happens is ad dollars go to digital. And digital focuses on direct response or return on ad spend as a key metric, as opposed to branding. And so it's interesting now because we've been on the path of digital being mostly a DR channel for a long time. So like if you think about the traditional marketing funnel, it's kind of compressed. And a good example of this is like an Instagram ad, for example. So you can see a new product in your feed that's relevant to you. So you've got awareness, discovery, and engagement with that product, and you can tap to buy. And so the marketing funnel is kind of being compressed into one impression almost. And there's a lot of CTV discussions about this as well. So one trend that I've seen so far here at CES are basically new technologies that enable connected TV to be compressed so that you can buy directly from your television set as you're watching it. So that's interesting, and that's going to be important for marketers as they think about their bottom line. But one other key sector that is changing quite a bit is search and alternative search. So Bing last year reported 16% year-over-year increases in revenue compared to Google, which increased by about 4.25%. So you're seeing these secondary and alternative search engines collecting more revenue from advertisers because of two things. Google is oversaturated with ads. If you use that, I'm sure you've noticed that you're actually now scrolling well below the fold to get to anything organic. So people are moving away from that because it's a bad experience, and advertisers are moving into those alternative search spaces because there's new demand there. And I'd be remiss not to mention Brave Search, which is one of our products in our stack of private internet tools. And we see this trend as well. So it's a year old. The growth that we're seeing is 2 to 3x year over year from a user standpoint, which is fantastic. We're seeing about 7 billion impressions annually, or queries annually, which is small compared to Google, but for a new search engine, very kind of impressive. It's our own index. It's not white labeling Bing, which is another reason Bing's revenue grows so much year over year, is because DuckDuckGo and other search engines white label their results and pay them revenue. I'm sure they count that. But we're seeing more and more interest in Brave Search because it's untapped demand globally across 30 countries. And we have a kind of a beta product out right now where some advertisers are jumping in and seeing really good results so far.
It's all great points. When I think about 2023, and to your point about the economy, I think it's never been more important to take care and build stronger relationships with the customers you already have. There's obviously a lot of focus on advertising for customer acquisition. That's always going to be a constant, always an important piece of the equation. But we at Braze, not to be confused with Brave, are very focused on customer engagement, retention. How do we help marketers accelerate and evolve their marketing programs? Modern technology for modern marketing programs. I think about things like the Brand Innovators SMS program. I don't know how many of you have signed up for the SMS program here. I quite find these communications extremely helpful, letting me know when the sessions are starting, what sessions are coming next. My whole trip actually to Las Vegas from New York, it seems like a series of experiences with some of the brands that I quite enjoy, from the airline that I fly that sends me a push notification to let me know that my flight's going to be delayed so I can plan and maybe leave the house a little bit later. The email that I get when I'm sitting on the tarmac saying that my bag's been loaded into the plane and I feel much better and I can breathe and rest for 5 hours and 45 minutes without worrying about my bag getting here. To arriving at the hotel and they have an SMS concierge service where they're engaging with me and saying, hey, let us know if you need anything. My name is so-and-so. And it's a very personalized experience. Right, that's right. But we think a lot about these personalized, relevant experiences. And to your point about people's preferences, understanding those preferences, really listening to them and actioning on them and sending them communications that are meaningful, that almost feel like a dialogue between brand and consumer. So this is going to be the year of really establishing and refining and evolving the relationship between consumers and the brands they love.
I think you guys have great areas for us to all be thinking about in 2023 and kind of just build on what you were saying, Dave. Relationships are so important. right? And so, and we're all trying to focus on building those so that we actually know people versus know, digits and data. But and just like we were talking about earlier, as we start to think about that, that means we actually need to know some information about people. And so how are you guys thinking about what effective marketing looks like in a very heavy, emerging heavy data and privacy environment? And I know Dave and Chris have kind of differing opinions on this a little bit from our conversation. So maybe we'll start with you guys first, and you can give the ends.
Well, yeah. So, I think in this privacy world, it's going to be harder and harder to go target people with content or advertising that they don't want. And I grew up in the content business back in the '90s, and everyone used to talk about content is king. And I don't think that's true anymore. But what I do think is going to be true in this privacy world is context as being king. And context can happen in many different ways. Revry is a great example of context, right? If you want to reach that audience, they've built a great content that can reach that audience in a very powerful way. So you don't need a lot of personal data. If they're on Revry, they're going to hit a certain demographic profile that you want to hit. Same thing with any in the endemic content, like a cooking show is a great place for food. The other place that context is going to be really important is location. So if you think about and I said I was a sunrise person. Coffee's really important, right? So advertising coffee outside a coffee shop on the streets of New York at 8 o'clock in the morning, I don't need a lot of data about someone to know that they're pretty likely going to want to stop at a Dunkin' Donuts or stop at their Starbucks. So that level of context is very powerfully. Similarly, and again, we're in Vegas, advertising alcohol at 11 p.m. at night right outside a bar and putting an alcohol brand in front of a consumer, again, is that same kind of context, both of which we do and other people do in the out-of-home space. So I think this power of context, whether it be in real life, which I think is really powerful and really important, and the only way you can do location targeting now in real life is through out-of-home advertising. That's important, but also in the digital world, aligning with powerful content brands that have strong demographic audiences that you can reach is another great form of context. So I think being able to put advertising in context will allow you to reach that audience without knowing a lot about them, because the content or the location draws them in or allows you to get them at the right spot. Retail media is another perfect example of that. That's context right before you're making a purchase. So I think that's what's going to drive a lot of marketing in this privacy and intensive time.
Yeah, I genuinely enjoy the kind of the geo-triggered communications and advertising. It certainly makes sense. Right time, right place, the right moment, meeting the consumer where they are. Since our inception at Braze, we've been all about first-party and even zero-party data. And I think that's very much the way of the future is how do we pay attention to how our customers are engaging with our brand. In our case, it's on owned digital channels. So if they've downloaded my mobile app, they visited my website, they engage with my email program, my SMS program, paying attention to those signals. It's an always-on marketing engine. I want to understand how these folks are engaging or not engaging, right? Because there's an inverse to everything as well. The concept of suppression is arguably just as important, if not more important, than just engaging people kind of thoughtlessly. So for us, it's always been about first-party data. How do we pay attention to people's behaviors? What are they engaging with our brand? What are their preferences? How do we get people to give us consent to collect information about them through some sort of value exchange? So important. Like, what is it that my brand is going to offer them in exchange for understanding what their shoe size is, what their favorite color shoe is, obviously using shoe as an example, there's a million different ways of looking at it. But once we get to that level of granularity on our customers and we understand them to that extent, we can obviously personalize things tremendously. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention as well, I think the concept of GDPR, CCPA, kind of all these, this really stringent data privacy and regulatory environment that we're in is only going to get more stringent. And so that's going to be the constant. So being able to adapt to those changes as time goes on is going to be really important. And that's another thing that we put a lot of thought into with our modern technology and programming, in that, right now with GDPR, somebody says, hey, listen, I want you to send all the data you have about me, and I want to be forgotten. Two of the core tenets of like a GDPR. And we make it easy, click of a button for a marketer to say, okay, here you go, you've been removed from our system. And to have privacy by design built into this modern technology and your modern marketing programs is absolutely critical for the future of operating in this environment.
Can I go?
Go ahead, Patrick.
There's a lot to like in both those answers, and I'll touch on both of those points. One thing, like the big takeaway, is that privacy in Web 2, think like Google, Amazon, Facebook, kind of like Web 2 platforms we're all familiar with and we use every day, it makes those ads more expensive. So when Apple rolled back their data sharing for these other platforms to use for targeting, CPMs went up. So Forbes wrote an article recently that looked at year-over-year increases in CPMs for Facebook, Snapchat, and TikTok, and they're all over 50% higher year over year. And a lot of that has to do with the lack of data that makes these things more efficient. And so you're starting to see that, back to the bottom line piece, that privacy in Web 2 is creating a bit more expense for marketers. And now more than ever, people have better tools that protect their privacy and allow them to engage with not only Web 2, but also Web 2.5 and 3. So if you bear with the numbers, there is a kind of a step to kind of a decentralized internet, and privacy is a big part of that. If you think about Brave, like we are a very easy to use Web 3 adjacent or Web 2.5 product or application or tool that starts with private by default. And it gives people the opportunity to opt into ads, to choose how many they want to see. We have a reward mechanism for that. We understand that privacy regulations or restrictions negatively impact the creator economy. So what we do is we give 70% of all ad dollars back to people. They then distribute them to creators and publishers, brands, and charities based on their utility. So it's a different model, but it starts with the basis of user first. And that's kind of like core to what we believe. And the way that we reach these folks who are opting in is in context and when they're giving consent. And so these two themes are extremely important for brands looking forward in this kind of privacy forward or first internet.
It's a great summary.
That's very good. Alia, you want to close us up on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, so for us, we're in the CTV space, which is still really getting its bearings. And so a lot of our data comes from our partners. And because there hasn't been a standardized set of what data comes from those partners, no one really gives you all the same. They even have the same thing with different names. Everything is just kind of still finding its way. We kind of comb through it on our side to get real understanding of who our audience is. But to the point that was made before, from a context perspective, if you're authentically trying to reach the LGBTQ community, if you know that's who you're trying to hit, the context through our content will let you know that that's who we're targeting, right? So LGBTQ and LGBTQ aligned audiences who want to watch this content, who are supportive or a part of the community, you're going to get that simply by advertising specifically with us. So as CTV kind of rounds out and figures out exactly what it's doing, at least through us, you definitely know you're going to be hitting that specific audience that you're trying to target.
Those are great insights, I think. And I like the user first. Sometimes I like to think, though, more people first, especially especially in this data and privacy piece, right? So that's great. Okay, well, I think I don't see anyone flashing us up with time, but I'm sure we're kind of coming up on the end here. Yeah, okay, good. Yes, so let's hear what you're reading about, and especially in these trends. And if you have some 30-second last words that you want to leave people with, you can do that too. All right.
I'll start.
Go ahead.
So I'm making a conscious effort to read to be more specific. So I've subscribed to a couple things. I can't recommend it more if you're interested in tech and media. is Stratechery by Ben Thompson. It's podcasts, newsletters. They come out multiple times a week, and if you subscribe, you get a few more additional sources. And The Economist. I love it for global perspective. So those are my two primaries. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Tech Meme Ride Home is a very good one for this business. The All In podcast is entertaining now. It used to be really good, but now it's like a little cringy. But the All In podcast still gets a reco from me. In terms of like final thoughts, for any brand marketers in the room, innovate through the dip. Like, don't rely on the big platforms that got you here in Web 2. It's not going to be as efficient or as effective, and there's a lot more interesting, innovative ways to engage with people when they're pulling you into their world versus pushing yourselves into their space. So that'd be my advice.
That's great. Chris, you want to?
In terms of reading, actually, listening is more the thing I've been doing, and the podcasts as well. Pivot with Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher, obviously, is a great one. And then Moody's has a fantastic one on the macroeconomic environment to follow stuff. In terms of final thoughts, I think one thing that you realize when you're at places like CES is there's no substitute for being in person together, and how much better that is than being over Zoom. So as you're thinking about that, bit of a shameless plug, but think about not only, is it great to be together, but also advertising in real life and in the real environment, and getting people while they're out and about and reaching them, I think is also very powerful as well. As we get back to normal life, being back in person and being able to be in these types of environments is so much better than what it was a couple of years ago. So I'm just happy to be back with people again.
That's a good one too. Alia, how about you?
Sure. So Pivot, yes, excellent. Also, Masters of Scale, huge fan of that. As far as like final thoughts, I think something that and I've mentioned this before at a different Brand Innovators event, which is that the LGBTQ audience in particular is a very loyal audience, and very very much believes in authenticity. And so as you're thinking about planning, don't just spend your dollars during Pride. Build relationship. Show up. Be available in November, be available in September, and not just in June, because they're also incredibly discerning. And so if you only show up in June, they're going to go, oh, okay, you threw a rainbow flag on it, that's cute, and not pay attention to you and not actually feel like it's authentic. So I would say really dig in, be available, be around, and build actual relationships with communities that you're trying to target.
Awesome. Wraps
So
up.
I'll close this out. I'll say all the podcasts and books and thought leaders thus far mentioned are excellent. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use OpenAI ChatGPT. I'm going to ask it to summarize all the audio, all of the books, all of the weekly newsletters, and help curate the top topics for me. I think that's going to be my New Year's resolution in 2023. How do I accelerate and evolve, which was kind of the theme of the start of the conversation here. Obviously, there's a lot of excitement around AI, machine learning, and things of that nature. I'm really excited to see what this year holds and how people are going to take advantage of new tools like OpenAI, ChatGPT, and when we think about a platform like Braze, where marketers are in the platform all day, every day, powering these personalized messages to their customers, sending emails, push notifications. It's copy. It's test, iterate, optimize. And the concept of accelerating that, not having to stare at a blank page every morning. What am I going to send today? What are the different variants? To be able to generate 100 and then another 100 and then tweak it and go deep there. I'm really excited by that. I want to see what people do with that.
That's great. Well, we really appreciate hearing your perspectives, giving us some inspiration into what to read and think about for 2023. And so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.